Hey guys, I'm Dave. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about investing the stock market and just trying to figure out ways to grow our money. This week's video, we're talking about space stocks. It's an area that I always find very interesting and exciting, not just because of the cool technologies involved, but also I think it's a exciting growing area of the market, one that used to be dominated by governments, a few companies with basic monopolies, and it's really opening up these days to a lot of small new players who are growing very quickly. So we're going to go over a bunch of different companies in the industry, just talk about what I think about each of them, just give a little overview so that you can learn the basics about each of these companies and then decide which ones you might be interested in if you want to research them further. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to say we finally hit 100 subscribers on the channel, so it's pretty exciting. Thanks for everyone who has subscribed, commented, liked, or even just watched a video. It's greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and jump into talking about the space stocks. So to start off with, we have some honorable mentions. These didn't make my list of space stocks that I wanted to cover in more detail. There's a few different reasons for that. For example, we have Boeing here, massive company. I'm sure everyone knows about them, but really the space area of their company, while massive relative to other companies, doesn't actually move the needle that much on their stock price. Much bigger side of their business is planes and other areas. So although they are a big player in the space industry and are very involved in bringing humans to the space station, or at least they will be, working on the new NASA SLS rocket, which has been delayed many times, by the way, to the stock is not that big a deal. So if you're investing solely because of the space section, I don't think Boeing is one you should look at. That's why they're not included. We also have some more traditional players like Northrop Grumman, Aerojet Rocketdyne, making rocket engines and stuff like that. Viasat, they run a satellite constellation, as well as Iridium, and Lockheed Martin as well has other big sections of their business other than the space, like planes and whatnot, that move the stock much more. So I'm really focusing on a lot of the newer companies that are 100% space related. And if you're interested in anyone on this list, I'm not saying they're a bad company. They're just not 100% exposed to space or launchers. So I haven't included them in the list. Okay, so number one on the list is Astra. Everyone probably knows about this one if you're interested in space stocks and space launches, as most of us are. There was a lot of hype around it when they initially went public about a couple years ago maybe, but it's really just been all downhill since their SPAC. As we can see, they were up at $17 a share, and now they're below $2 a share, or thereabouts. So if you invested in this one from the beginning, you've not done very well at all. It's actually down at $1.50 a share, so like basically 10 times lower. It's really tough. But a few reasons for that. Partially just the macro markets have been punishing any stocks that are growth oriented and have not yet been making a profit. Also, they've had several high profile launch failures where rockets either exploded or didn't get off the pad. Recently, they were launching 2 NASA satellites into orbit, which are always very high profile launches. And unfortunately, their rocket engine shut off on the second stage and failed just short of getting to the proper orbit. So that launch was also a failure and a big blow for them. They'll have to wait and figure out what was wrong, try to fix that before they can launch again. So they've been burning cash very quickly. It's a bit of a concern. This is their CEO, very charismatic guy, Brian Kemp. seems to know what he's doing for sure, and they have a very small rocket right now. They're working on a new, larger rocket for the future, but currently they just have launched, like 50 kilogram payloads into orbit, something like that, very small. Even smaller than the Electron, really, although a little bit wider, but height-wise a lot smaller. It hasn't had a very good success history with this rocket. They've had a lot of failures, which isn't too unexpected with new rockets. We all know SpaceX had many failures before they really got it down, and now every launch almost is a complete success. So if you learn from your failures, it's not always bad, but it's starting to look like we've had a little too many failures with this rocket, and the reliability, for whatever reason, may not be there. Astra is not going after reusability, which is a big negative in my books. I'm very big on reusability. But what they are doing is focusing on manufacturing extremely efficiently and extremely cheaply, and being able to launch very frequently and make their money that way. So as we saw, the stock price has been absolutely decimated, and a lot of people are wondering if it's possible this company will go out of business actually with this latest failure. I checked the balance sheet, and they had a cash balance at the end of last quarter of $255 million. When we're still projecting losses going forward. Their loss for that last quarter was $85 million. So if you annualize that out, we've got maybe a year or so of launches at this rate before we go out of business. So they definitely need to start having successful launches and either raise more money, take on more debt, or turn a profit, because the cash burn rate is not sustainable for that long. It's a little bit concerning to me, to be honest. So I don't think I would invest in this company, because if they do raise money, they're diluting at a very low share price. So it's you're getting a lot less bang for your buck from that sense. You really want to raise capital by issuing shares from a position of strength, not a position of weakness where they are right now. On the upside, though, they do have a very impressive launch cadence. They're able to launch very quickly. They have had successful launches before. There was 2 successful launches where they got satellites to orbit, and they do have some important NASA contracts, which are quite exciting. So there are some upsides still, but this one is a little too risky for me to invest in right now. I need to see some successful launches with this rocket, and maybe some more information on Rocket 3, and just really see their cash burn stabilize to make sure that their liquidity situation is safe. Next up, we have Rocket Lab. If you know me, then you'll probably know this is my favorite company on the list. I am an investor in them. Nevertheless, they have also been hit hard, not quite as hard as Astra, of course, but after going public, briefly spiking up to over $17 a share, so similar levels to where Astra was. We're now down to $4.20 a share. It's a lot better than $1.50, of course, but it's still not great in terms of where they used to be. Having said that, though, I don't think they're in any immediate danger of going out of business. I like their business models, and to me it seems like a pretty decent buy right now at these levels, or at least a decent deal. CEO is this guy right here, Peter Beck, incredibly smart. He designs rockets, is an engineer, not just on the financial business side of things. We have their Electron rocket on the right launching. They began with the launch pad in New Zealand. They now have a few more launch pads, and they are working on a new next-generation launch vehicle called Neutron, which will be mostly reusable, except for a small second stage, which is inside the fairing. So the fairing is also reusable. But one of the things I like about them is they are chasing reusability very diligently. They're even trying to make their current small sat launcher, the Electron, reusable by bringing it down through the atmosphere, catching it with a helicopter, and then bring it back into land with a parachute, that is, and then catching the parachute with the helicopter. They were successful in catching their last rocket in a test attempt. Although they did detach it from the helicopter without bringing it into land because they were worried about some weight issues. But they've done most of the hard work from what I can see on making Electron reusable, and I think that should greatly reduce costs and allow them to launch more frequently. Is that instead of building a new rocket from scratch, you're just refurbishing and refueling and relaunching. So that's a big game changer for me, as well as the Neutron rocket, which will be able to launch massive satellite constellations, kind of like the Falcon 9 has been doing. They also have a space systems business, which not a lot of people really talk about or know about. It's really equal to the launch business in a lot of ways, in spite of the fact that the launch business is a lot more splashy, gets a lot more headlines. But the space systems business, where they manufacture components for satellites, other launchers, basically anything that goes into space, they want to be able to make it for you. They recently acquired a solar cell company so they can make these solar cells for satellites. And the revenue for that side of the business is growing extremely quickly as well, which is great to see. And they see a kind of a 50-50 split moving forward long term, with about 50% margin, so that's a pretty good margin. They have $700 million of cash in the bank, and last quarter they only burned $70 million. So if you contrast that to Rocket Lab, they have, a good 5 years before you would have to worry about any sort of going out of business, and they do plan to be profitable by about 2024, I believe, or 2025. So not profitable yet, but they're looking to turn a profit a little bit more quickly. So I'm very interested in Rocket Lab. I think it's a great stock to follow, and I would recommend looking into it yourself. Next one, we have Virgin Galactic. This is a bit of an interesting one. It's gotten a lot of headlines just because of billionaire Richard Branson has backed it, and they're actually taking passengers aboard, which always gets more interest than just sending satellites to orbit. So it's a space tourism company where they, I'll show you here. Here we have Richard Branson, by the way. So they have their Launcher 2 vehicle, which is carried up into the upper atmosphere by a plane. So in that sense, they are reusable in that they can reuse the plane and reuse the launch vehicle, which is nice because, I love reusability. But personally, I'm not crazy about the space tourism business. They can take something like 6 people aboard and they have to charge them $450,000. So it's not cheap. I don't know how. I suppose there's enough people out there who want to experience, 20 minutes of weightlessness or whatever it is to go up into the upper atmosphere. It's debatable if it's across the space line. It depends. There's certain technicalities on whether you consider that to actually be space or not. But so you can take 6 people up, charge them $450,000 each, see how the demand shakes out. But I'm not crazy about space tourism. On their most recent test flight, where Richard Branson was on board, the flight coming back down veered out of the intended path it was supposed to take, and that caused them to have delays and all sorts of inquiries. So they haven't actually taken any customers up yet. They've been burning cash. They have $600 million in the bank as of the last quarterly results, and in the previous 12 months, they burned $316 million. So that would give them runway of about 2 years of cash burn before they're out of money. So they need to start making money relatively quick as well, or again, raise cash, which you generally don't like to see as a shareholder because it means dilutions. So not one I'm interested in personally in investing in, but always fun to follow their success and exciting to see the space industry grow larger. Not really a competitor to Rocket Lab or any of the other launchers you'd have to worry about. Main competitor would be Blue Origin, which is not a publicly traded company. Next, we have Virgin Orbit, kind of the sister company to Virgin Galactic. This is similar, but it's a small sat launcher. Also had a horrible run on the stock, as you can see pretty much all of these have over the last year or two. Their kind of claim to fame is that they once again attach their rocket to a plane, fly the plane up pretty much as high as it can, then release the rocket and send the rocket the rest of the way from there. So again, very small payloads, more of a competitor to Astra or Rocket Lab than Galactic would be. And the plane is reusable, so in a sense, you could consider the first stage of the rocket to be reusable, which is kind of a plus, but they're not reusing the actual rocket as far as I'm aware. The payloads are quite small. They're not really launching customer payloads much yet. I haven't seen much of a launch cadence, so this is not one I am that interested in, but I wish them all the best, and it's always fun to track their progress. Let me know in the comments, by the way, if you guys are interested in Virgin Galactic or Virgin Orbit, and why you like these companies as opposed to, say, Rocket Lab. So, somewhat reusable for them, which could definitely help margins, but they're not launching that much, and still very early on, still losing money as well. Last one here is a bit of a different beast. It's Maxar Technologies. So they aren't a launcher, so I was a little hesitant to put them on the list, but I feel like I have to just because they're a really big player these days, and they do make space components as well. You can see their stock has held up actually better than a lot of these other companies. A lot of the reason behind that is that they do somewhat have real revenue and have turned profits for multiple quarters. So the stock market right now likes these kind of companies better than obviously the ultra growth companies that are still losing money. That being said, they have had declining revenues for the past few quarters, which is a bit of a concern to me. And as we can see, the satellites they launched, they've got a lot of interesting contracts, though. And let's just go over a bit of what they do. So they're a satellite operator operating Earth imagery and other geospatial data sourced from their advanced satellite constellation. So they run their own satellites up there, and they can provide you services from those satellites as opposed to just building them or launching them. As well, though, they have a space infrastructure segment that provides space-based infrastructure, robotics, subsystems, and information solutions. So this side is where they're more of the competitor with a few of those other names, as they do provide space-based infrastructure, robotics, and subsystems for other satellites and stuff like that. So they're an interesting one. I wouldn't say they're going as fast, but as a company that doesn't have a launch vehicle, I'm not that interested in them. I just feel like if you can master a reusable launch vehicle, it really provides so much value, and it would allow you to, say, undercut a company like Maxar by launching your own satellites more cheaply, cutting out the middleman and not having to pay those fees, whereas Maxar has to go and pay someone to launch their satellites, which they provide these services from. So that's the last one on the list. Let's head back and wrap it up. So just to wrap up our discussion, that was just a brief overview of some of the more well-known small space companies that are growing in the industry right now that are publicly traded. I obviously still favor Rocket Lab, I think, although I am somewhat interested in Astra, although they really need to get their cash situation under control and get a better launch success rate on their current vehicle. Maxar could also be somewhat interesting, although they have had a bit of declining revenue recently, but at least they've turned a profit before. The Virgin Galactics and Virgin Orbits, not really too interested, and definitely not interested in Boeing right now, at least for their space section. I suppose you could make an argument that their planes are worth investing in, but that's not really what the video is about. So let me know what you guys think. Is there any other space-based companies you think should be on the list? What do you own? Is it Rocket Lab? Is it Astra? Is it someone else? Why do you own it? And are you selling, holding, or buying more? This was just a brief overview of the industry, but I have gone into more depth on the past in Rocket Lab. I encourage you to check out those videos, as well as Astra, and I'll be doing more deep dives on these companies later on. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.